Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Matthew Rose, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Flight Lieutenant Chloe Lowndes. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of the RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, North Sydney Demonstration School, North Sydney, and from Queensland, St Columba's Primary School, Wilston. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you, students. You may now be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Flight Sergeant Julian Dobinson. Born in the Melbourne suburb of Albert Park on the 12th of December 1917, Julian Dobinson was the son of William and Margaret Jessie Stewart Dobinson. Growing up, the young Julian Dobinson attended Middle Park Central School, then Melbourne Grammar. A keen sportsman, he played football and cricket and participated in boxing, rowing and swimming. Following his schooling, Dobinson was employed as an advertising clerk for the Vacuum Oil Company in Yarraville. After the outbreak of the Second World War, Dobinson served in the 57th 60th Battalion of the Militia before enlisting in the Royal Australian Air Force on the 30th of January 1942. Dobinson commenced training as an air observer and bomb aimer before embarking for overseas service in early March 1943. As part of the Empire Air Training Scheme, he was one of almost 27,500 RAF pilots, navigators, wireless operators, gunners and engineers who throughout the course of the war joined Royal Air Force squadrons and Australian squadrons based in Britain. Arriving in Britain in April 1943, Dobinson undertook further specialist training before being posted to No. 460 Squadron, Royal Australian Air Force in September. No. 460 Squadron would become the most highly decorated Australian squadron in Bomber Command and was the squadron that suffered the highest casualties. Flying twin-engine Vickers Wellington's medium bombers and then the 4-engine Avro Lancaster heavy bombers, the squadron lost over 1,000 men, Australian, British, Canadians, New Zealanders and South Africans. Almost 600 Australians from 460 Squadron are listed here in the Roll of Honour. On the night of the 2nd of January 1944, the Lancaster in which Dobinson was the bomb aimer took off from RAF Binbrook to take part in a large raid on Berlin. Just after takeoff, Dobinson's Lancaster, fully laden with bombs for the mission ahead, banked sharply and dived uncontrollably into the ground, exploding on impact. Dobinson and all 6 of his fellow crewmates were killed. They were the Australians, Flight Lieutenant Barrington Nivet, Flight Sergeant John Farthing, Flight Sergeant Henry Gill, Pilot Officer Edwin Ross, and Flying Officer Colin Pickworth, and a British flight engineer, Sergeant Ronald Trett. The Australian members of the crew were buried side by side at the RAF plot at Cambridge Cemetery. Julian Dobinson was 26 years old. His name is listed here on the Roll of Honour on my left among some 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Sergeant Julian Dobinson, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in hope of a better world.
Boys and girls, please stand for the reading of the ode, the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and we wish you all a very good evening.